Welcome back to the Fallen Giants rebuild here on Super Sammy Plays. Last season was our best one yet as we made real steps forward to making Deportivo great again. But with our 3 seasons using players under our height restriction of 6'2" now over, we've got a busy summer ahead as we look to move on the players that don't fit the bill, else they'll be just sitting around collecting dust. We've also got interest in some of our key players, which we might actually need to take advantage of because the transfer budget we've got isn't exactly allowing us to make many additions to the squad. So, who stays and who goes? Let's get into it and find out. Our first job was to move on the last remaining players who didn't meet our 6'2" height requirement. We received offers for Nicky and Newby from Las Palmas and Granada respectively, resulting in both players leaving the club for a combined 700k. And most of that would be used on a new right wing back as previous options didn't fit our requirements and had left the club. So with that we made an offer for Curaçao's Livano Comenencia, who had a release clause of 1.2 million. Not the most exciting option but a cheap quick fix. The next one is probably a blessing in disguise as we needed a new goalkeeper with our current number 1 just an inch short of the required height. Firstly, we made an offer for 21-year-old Karim Matisli, who for just 1.7 million would be a solid backup, as our current one was retiring. And our first choice was going to be Luca Brumans, who at just 6'7" would be a man mounted in goal. And still just 19 years old, hopefully with some development he'd be our goalkeeper for years to come. After confirming the Karim signing, we did have to move on current goalkeeper Fernandes though to pay for Brumans. But thankfully we had a couple of options with both Al-Shabaab and Barcelona interested. Fernandes weren't the only one of our players the Saudis were looking at, as Al-Fatih had declared an interest in Christopher Cupps, and with Fernandes choosing Al-Shabaab over Barcelona, he left the club, allowing us to confirm the Brummans deal. With the transfer window now open, we tried to shift a few more of our players that didn't fit the criteria. Firstly, by offering out one of our main men, Cagliata, for just 1.2 million, which felt crazy low for how good he'd been for us over the last 3 seasons, before inviting offers from Levante for Luismi Cruz. But what happened next was the price of a successful last season, as Al Fatih had turned their attention from Cups to defensive midfielder Castaneda, making an offer that matched his release clause of just 11 million. He was, however, willing to sign a new deal, so we got to work on offering him a new contract with a huge pay rise and a much increased release clause. But unfortunately, it was to no avail as Castaneda accepted Al Fatih's offer and left to join the Saudi club. And in more bad news, we'd received 5 offers for Cagliata, who decided to reject every single one of them. Thankfully though, we'd quickly found a replacement for Castaneda as we confirmed the signing of Leslie Ugochukwu for the same fee. At 24 years old and a great personality type, he looked like a good option and hopefully with some development to improve our midfield. We also confirmed the sale of Cruz for 1.2 million. Hilariously, we then received a job interview for the vacant Girona post, and if you don't understand why that's funny, you should probably go and watch the previous episodes. We also accepted loan offers for Edicheri, who was unhappy at the club, before upsetting another one of our players as we rejected Monaco's low-ball offer for Kramer. And with all these outgoings, we needed more depth in the squad, so I made a loan offer for Chelsea fullback Josh Achampong, as well as offering a contract to free agent Bernasconi. Achampong joined with a future fee of 12.5 million, which, I'll be honest, isn't likely to get triggered. But it was time for our first match of the season, with us playing Getafe at the Riazor with our new-look squad. And we got off to the perfect start in this one with Mamba's cross finding Sharon Dorr, who headed into the bottom corner to give us the lead in the opening 3 minutes. But just a few minutes into the second half, Mamba headed back towards goal, giving us a moment that the departed Fernandes would be proud of, as Karim was unable to keep it out, levelling the game at 1-1. But when Furheld crossed towards Almala, he was pushed over, winning us a penalty in the 77th minute, which Almala stepped up and smashed into the top corner to restore our lead, earning us 3 points on the opening day. Bernasconi had agreed to join, meaning we'd have a solid backup to Mamba for the left wing-back position, as well as bringing in another midfielder, Luis Engels. And fun fact, this is actually Daniel Farke's son and looks to be a really well-rounded midfielder who should provide competition for both Ugochukwu and Ndor. And finally, Cagliata had agreed a deal to leave the club with him joining Real Betis, and we also moved on Dele Alli, who you probably forgot was even still at the club. With our transfer budget now gone, we weren't expecting any more signings, So it was time to try and get all our new players gelling together as we looked ahead in hope of another successful campaign. But our second game of the season would be a tough one as we travelled to the Metropolitano to face Atletico Madrid. Almada got us back level in the 5th minute after some brilliant work from Mamba to cancel out Ruggeri's opener, before Lookman smashed home to restore Atleti's lead. For a second time, Almada and Mamba combined to get us back level before an absolute worldie from Nicolo Tresoldi putting Atleti 3-2 up with a goal worthy of winning any match. We got back to winning though as we beat Girona 4-2 with a brace from new signing Engels before another new signing, Bernasconi, got the winner in a 2-1 victory over Cordoba. With the transfer window now shut, we didn't have to worry about anyone coming and taking any more of our players. Not that they'd have been impressed with our 0-0 draw against Villarreal or our 1-0 loss to Sevilla. Our next game, however, was certainly an improvement as Engel scored another 2 goals in a 4-0 demolition of Athletic Club. And with that win, we went on a real good run, beating Osasuna, Cadiz and Mallorca before a historic 3-1 win over Barcelona, with Engel scoring another brace after Almada's brilliant equaliser. With the form we were in, it was probably as good a time as any for us to face Real Madrid. However, it was Mbappe who opened the scoring after Arda Güler had pounced on Kramer's loose touch. And after Valverde added a second inside 30 minutes, our winning run looked to be coming to an end. We came out for the second half looking inspired though as Dumbia pulled a goal back for us in the 48th minute before Almala's free kick was headed down to Ugachukwu, who got us back level just 6 minutes from time. So our winning run had come to an end, but taking 4 points against Barcelona and Real Madrid was certainly something to be proud of. It also meant we were sat in second place after the opening 12 games, which was pretty incredible considering the turnover of players in the summer. It was clear to see the reason for our early success though, as Almada and Engels were hard carrying the team with their goals. Unfortunately, we started November by dropping more points in a 1-1 draw with Real Valladolid after young goalkeeper Brumman's error gifted Latassa a late equaliser. Macama then scored twice in a 4-1 victory over Valencia before losing the first Galician derby of the season in a disappointing 2-0 defeat to Celta Vigo. We did finish the month on somewhat of a positive note though, advancing through the Copa del Rey with a 5-0 victory over Intercity. We continued that positive win with another, beating Real Betis 2-0 with goals from Macama and Bernasconi in the first game of a tough double-header. Real Sociedad, however, would prove to be a more difficult opponent, as Sola opened the scoring in the 14th minute. We did, however, get back into this one with goals from Mamba and Engels as we took a 2-1 lead into half-time. Sociedad came out in the second half a different side though, getting back level through a Christopher Cupp's own goal, before Zakarian put them in front and eventually Palmer wrapped up the game making it 4-2 in the 63rd minute. Next up was Racing de Santander, who opened the scoring in the 17th with a goal Tony Pulis would be proud of. Mamba got us back level on the half-hour mark, heading home Dumbia's free kick, before Dumbia got a goal of his own, putting us 2-1 up just before half-time. This time, after getting in front, we never looked back, even after Almada missed a penalty. Macama rounded out the scoring in a 4-1 win. We also beat Rayo Vallecano 2-1 before another Copa del Rey victory, beating Ibiza 5-1. So at the halfway point of the season, unbelievably, we were still sitting in second place, albeit Barcelona have a game in hand on us, but let's be honest, we certainly didn't expect to be competing at this level so early on. After an unbelievable first half of the season, confidence was at an all-time high, and everything seemed to be going our way. Until it wasn't. Firstly, Karabek was kicking off handing in a transfer request after being unhappy with his game time, even though his agreed playing time is only as a squad player. But our main concern was when goalkeeper Bromans picked up an injury, meaning he'd miss the next 2 to 4 weeks, which usually isn't a big deal. But when backup goalkeeper Karem was already sidelined for 7 to 10 months with a ruptured patella tendon, it was fair to say we had a major issue on our hands. In more positive news, our players look to be developing nicely with Cups, Ugachukwu, Engels, Macama and Ndor all showing improvements. But this was about as positive as things got for us this month, as we lost our first game back after the winter break, losing 1-0 to Atletico Madrid before getting knocked out of the Copa del Rey by Real Madrid for the second season in a row. And off the pitch weren't any better, as Ndor, Sissoko and Achimpong all had issues they wanted addressing. The first two were unhappy with their game time, which was easily fixable. The third, not so much. Seems like I'd made a slight oversight when offering for Achimpong, as I changed his role to inside wing-back to suit our formation, but not realised I'd left his position as full-back, as opposed to a wing-back, which resulted in Chelsea recalling him from his loan and leaving us a man short. We then drew 1-1 with Girona before managing to get a new loan signing in just before the window closed. Not that we actually knew much about him. That weren't exactly the January I had in mind after such a solid campaign so far. But with the window now shut again, we had to get back to the task at hand, as we were on track to win Champions League football for the first time since the 04-05 season. So when we ended January by losing to Cordoba, it weren't exactly the sort of response I was looking for. We did at least improve in our next outing, as we beat the Yellow Submarine 3-1, thanks to a brace from Makama and Ndor with the other. It weren't exactly an easy month in terms of fixtures though, as we drew 1-1 with Sevilla before a 2-0 defeat to Athletic Club, with Brumans doing his best Fernandes impression. We did at least end the month on a high, as we did our best Arsenal impression with goals from Mambwer and Beto from corners, before Almala showed his brilliance once again in a 3-1 defeat of Osasuna. Beating Cadiz 4-1 made it back-to-back wins before again dropping points, this time in a 2-0 defeat to Mallorca. So, not exactly the result I was looking for before heading into a doubleheader against Barcelona and Real Madrid. However, when Jules Koundé was sent off in the 20th minute, it looked like it could be our day. That was until Rafinha scored 3 minutes into the second half, before Firmin somehow doubled their lead, claiming a goal from Yamal's shot. But 3 minutes later, Engels gave us a glimmer of hope as he headed home to make it 2-1, and then 20 minutes from time, Makama scored this brilliant goal to get us back level. Then 10 minutes later, Mambwer's cross was tucked home by Engels for his second goal of the game, as we completed not only a comeback, but incredibly a double over Barcelona, beating them both home and away this season. The Real Madrid game was totally the opposite to the Barcelona tie, with just a Kylian Mbappe penalty the difference between the sides. And with our inconsistent form, we'd fallen to 6th heading into the final 7 games of the season. It was, however, extremely tight between Real Sociedad in 3rd and us in 6th, with just 2 points the difference. With a 6-point lead and game in hand over Real Betis in 7th, we at least look set to win some form of European football for next season. Obviously, any form of European football would be huge for the club, but having sat in the Champions League spots for the majority of the season, that had to be the goal headed into the final few matches. So, beating both Real Valladolid and Valencia convincingly was certainly the perfect response to that Madrid loss, before making it 3 unbeaten with a 2-2 draw in the Galician derby. We then beat Real Betis 3-1 in what was nearly the perfect month, before Almala dropped an absolute bombshell on us. Even with our strong standing in the league this season, he didn't think our squad was strong enough and wanted to leave for a bigger club. He wanted Champions League football, and apparently it wasn't realistic for it to happen here, which is ironic considering we currently sat in 3rd place with a 4-point gap over Sociedad with just 3 games remaining. I told him he had a release clause for a reason, in the hopes that we'd secure Champions League football and the matter would be dropped. And just for reference, his release clause is 70 million. Our next fixture was a big one as we played the team just below us in the league, Real Sociedad. So what a great time it was for Ugachukwu to score this screamer to put us 1-0 up. Targaryen did level the game up for Sociedad as we went on to share the spoils in a 1-1 draw, but that was perfect for us as they hadn't gained any ground. All we needed to do now was win our last couple of games and we should secure Champions League football for next season. Makama put us 1-0 up against Racing de Santander after a brilliant pass from Engels, before Dumbia headed home from Almala's cross to wrap up a 2-0 victory. And on to the final game against Rayo Vallecano, and it took us just 3 minutes to get off the mark in this one with another Makama-Engels combination, before Dumbia doubled our lead in the 6th minute. And we were out of sight in the 20th as Makama headed home for his second, before Almala joined in on the scoring with a lovely first-time volley to make it 4. And then 1 minute into injury time, a Hollywood pass from Freeman, a ridiculous touch from Akama set him on his way to score his hat-trick in a 5-0 demolition of Vallecano. Turns out those last two wins weren't necessary, as Sociedad had fallen off and we'd comfortably finished third by 6 points, meaning next season we'd be playing Champions League football. An incredible season wrapped up with a perfect final day performance with 5 of our players getting in the team of the week. 3 of those players were unbelievable all season for us, with Makama finishing on 21 goals, Almala not far behind with 19, and new signing Engels incredibly scoring 13 from central midfield. Keeping Almala, however, was going to be our next test though, as Man United was showing interest. 19 assists from Mamba was very good to see and reminiscent of Cagliata's first season for us back in the Liga 2, showing his importance to us. But we're going to have a difficult summer ahead as 2 of our top players are wanted, and with the budget we've been given, we can't exactly go and strengthen without players leaving first. But we might not have a say in the second part of that sentence. So, what an unexpected season that was. After so many incomings and outgoings at the start of the season, I'd have just been happy to slightly improve on last season. I certainly didn't expect to finish in third with Champions League football. However, we are in for a tough summer, as you've already seen with Engels and Almala both wanted. And I'm sure off the back of that campaign, there'll be plenty of interest in some of our other players as well. But to see if we can keep hold of Almala, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode. And if you've enjoyed this one, do me a favour, hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.